and your two favorite head bobbers on Monday morning, Mojo Monday. Rick Hale, how are you?
Couldn't be better, Brett. Beautiful day, beautiful time to get mojoed up. Let's go.
Let's roll. So we are like in the middle of this series called the 6 Myth Understandings, and they come out of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book written by Gary Keller and the late Dave Jinks and Jay Papasan. And they're just kind of those things that we tell ourselves that aren't true. But Rick, you and I both know if you tell yourself something enough times, you'll actually believe it to be true. And they're just those things, right? So there's 6 of them. We're on number 3 today, but the first 2, just to kind of reiterate, is the first one was, I can't do it. And we've talked about, I can't run a triathlon, or I can't run an Ironman. It's not really true. It's just, we believe we can't because we've told ourselves that so many times. Yep. And then the second one is, it can't be done in my market. And, you know, we look for reasons or excuses of why we can't do things instead of looking for reasons or possibilities of what we can do. And it's just it's a defense mechanism, right? But at the end of the day, you want to be careful the story that you're telling yourself. And that's what these really are about. Well, the third one, Rick, is the third myth understanding is, it would take too much time and effort. I would lose my freedom. What do you think of that?
Well, there's no doubt that if your goal is to create a life worth living and create a future to be proud of, there's some effort that's required. And so the question is, how efficient and effective can you be in creating a future that's by design and not default? And what are the compromises that might have to be made to initiate a trajectory that leads you there?
Yeah. I usually hear people saying this statement when they're like, yeah, I kind of like my life right now. I would like to make more money, but I don't want to lose my freedom. Like, I like the way my life is set up right now. So in their head, the story, if I were to make more money, I would not be able to live my life the same way I'm living my life today, which is not true, but that's the story they're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to limiting beliefs and possible uncertainty in your own heart and mind about your capacity. Yeah. And that's part of it. The other is, there's probably people that really don't want to work that hard. And you know what? If you're living your perfect life and your lane is working for you, stay in your lane.
Yeah, well, but I think the whole point of it is if you actually have a desire for a bigger life, don't let the story keep you from getting there, thinking that it's just going to cause you to lose the freedoms you exist today, right?
Well, and you know what, Brett, this is the part that people need to connect the dots with. And from going all the way back to the first misunderstanding, you got to get really clear on whether you can't or won't, because there's things we can't do. And we kind of worked our way through that. We're not in a position to necessarily run a triathlon or an Ironman, but it's not because we can't, it's because we choose not to. It might take a year or 2 or 3, a professional trainer. It might require quitting your job to train 8 hours, but there's no way you couldn't if your life depended on it. But when you fast forward to what you can and won't, just make sure you're really clear in the motivation behind it. And, recognizing, I think the first step is recognizing that all activities are not equally weighted or have equal value.
Yep.
And so it's choice, not chance, that kind of determines your destiny when it comes to how you wake up and spend and invest your time in your day.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting in life is we have this relationship between time and money, right? And we tend to think that we're trading our time for money. And, there's an article that talks about the 7 steps. I'll share this article. But what's interesting is if you kind of go down to the article, you got the old cash flow quadrant, which is the ESBI quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki's book, The Cash Flow Quadrant. But in the E quadrant, we actually do trade time for money. We're an employee. I trade my time and you compensate me for it. And then when you choose to move into the self-employed world, you're still trading your time for money. You just are getting paid better because you're
Yeah,
paying
100%.
yourself, right? Or hopefully, assuming all things hold true. But there's this infamous right side of this cash flow quadrant, which is the business quadrants and the investor quadrant, which really says there are other ways to make money instead of just trading your time. There's leverage series, which is tools, models, systems, people, build a business, right? And that business will create income for you, or create your resources or your abundance and put it into investments and let those investments make money for you. And in all those, if you understand that principle, you actually don't lose your time, which is what most people equate to losing their freedom, by making more money. But it's not easy.
No, but you can make a ton of money in the self-employed quadrant. There's tremendous wealth built there.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who sells medical supplies that makes over $1 million a year selling medical supplies. If you live by the, Mo Anderson mantra of, spend 70%, save 10%, invest 10%, and then gift or tithe 10%. And you make that kind of money, it's not if, it's when you retire wealthy, and you'll have enough passive income for investments and investing maybe even in other people's businesses where that trade-off of time and money isn't quite as impactful on you building a business. But at the same time, one of the greatest realizations of my career and life were in 2001 when I was invited to Gary Keller's Enter 100 Mastermind, and I flew out to Austin. And the very first trip out, it became really clear that people who were doing far more business had a far better life, not just more economic return, but because of the leverage piece and because of automation and because of the tools, resources, and marketing budgets they had, there was a certain amount of momentum that came with their success that freed them up to go spend 6-7 weeks a year traveling to big events and training opportunities so that they come back and feed the family and feed their work family.
Yeah.
And where I was kind of stuck in the messy middle where I was doing a fair amount of business. I think I was on pace to make 400,000 or 500,000 that year and about 80 or 90 transactions. And I was doing it with one assistant and one buyer's, and we were just stretched to the max, where if I'd had 3 buyer's agents, 3 admins, and a real marketing budget to elevate, to fund, and fuel it, things might look different. And that was my aha. It's like more business, although the one myth is that your brain says, wow, that's going to create so much more stress, more transactions, but you have more resources to spread that energy around on. And you also get to focus on the things you're good at when you have a robust team.
There you go. And I mean, we talk about losing the freedom. Truth is, what I'm hearing you say is, if you actually figure it out, you might gain more freedom.
Right. Well, you're in the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the more money you make, the more capacity you have to invest in freedom. Gary would also say this from the one thing: there's no job too small to outsource or subcontract.
Absolutely. I was watching that TV show Yellowstone, and the lead character Beth was talking to a younger boy in the series, and she said, there's really only 4 ways to get rich, son. Said the first way is you inherit it, second way is you steal it, and the third way is you work really hard for it. And I'll let anybody else listen for the 4th way if they ever watch the TV show. But working really hard is a work ethic. We talk about that, and I think my parents, I'm assuming most people's parents, tried to instill that in their children, like work really hard for what you get. But there's also a way we learn later on in our journey, like it's not just work hard, it's work hard and work smart, right?
Right. Well, if you hone your craft and you get really good at what you do, the ability to attract talented people to support your cause and purpose, it gets easier. And so the step one is to get really good at it. But I do believe you have to do the work to earn the right to buy back freedom, in terms of, that proverbial question of who, not what.
You don't get to skip it. You don't get to skip it, right?
You can't just wake up on third base unless you inherit it, or you steal it, which I don't recommend. Inheritance is great. Wouldn't recommend stealing it. The price for that's high. Yeah. But earning it, I tell you, the badge of honor you get when you do the work and you carry the bag and you hit doors, and man, it's a beautiful thing to wake up on the other side of it with a sense of pride and perspective that you only get when you do the work. In fact, there was a stat I just read that said 70% of generational wealth is lost in the second generation.
Oh, wow.
That's
Wow.
sobering. That's
That's
sobering.
I'll tell you another sobering thought, Rick, is how many people do we all know wake up at some point in their latter years of their life and go, hey, I didn't really plan appropriately.
Mm.
I didn't think about my end game early enough to actually be purposeful about creating that. And this myth understanding actually could cause somebody not to create a great end game for themselves because they're afraid of it, right? What do you make of that?
I mean, you can only count on today. Today is your day, Brett, and tomorrow is unknown. Yesterday's behind us, and depending on the seeds you plant, there's only two great times to plant a tree. It's yesterday and today, right? Because
Right.
you don't know what tomorrow brings. And so, my advice in this part of the conversation is simply, be prepared for the worst, but expect the best. And make sure that you've packed a parachute, but you can't wait till tomorrow to pack a parachute if your plane engine quits working, right?
Yeah.
And so leverage is king in having, a saving strategy and having an investment strategy and having an insurance strategy. Those three together will provide, hopefully the byproduct of that is the self-confidence to go take a few risks that you wouldn't without a parachute and without a backup plan. But, you still have to take that first big step off a ledge and start running.
Yeah. I think about living a big life, and the analogy would be like if you bought a big piece of furniture from IKEA, there is an instruction manual on how to do that. And you just have to have the desire to want to live a big life. And then let us be the instruction manual to help you get there. And just know it's not going to blow your life up if you listen to us. And you're not going to lose your freedom if you do it the right way. There's a model to it. And when you understand that you can live a big life, just follow the instruction manual. As every person that's ever put together an IKEA piece of furniture understands, you have to follow the instruction manual, right?
But no step skipping.
No step skipping, but don't let it be that story in your head. Right, Rick? I mean, it's that story we tell ourselves that either keeps us from having a great end game, keeps us from living a big life, keeps us from just living a great life. So yeah. I want you to challenge us. What do we need to challenge people around this story, around going big, right?
Well, part of it is recognizing what you want the end game to be, because you can't reverse engineer a daily strategy or a weekly or monthly strategy if you don't know where you're going. You have to pick a destination, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years in advance. What do you want your legacy to be? And then what does it require economically? And what does a parachute look like? What amount of savings, what amount of insurance, and what amount of passive income is required to make sure that you can always make the corner on your core expenses and hit the waterline. And then from there, it's just gravy and you're stacking chips for, again, a big outcome. So I think it starts with recognizing where you want to land, whether it's a month, a year from now, 5 years from now, and then figure out what it looks like today. Keep it simple. Don't let the world outside noise complicate what really doesn't have to be complicated, and make sure your highest dollar productive behavior shows up first in the day so the rest is gravy.
Rick Hale, Mojo Monday, my friend.
All right. Keep it simple.